Hello there, YouTube. It's rather petty rant time again. So, like, over the summer, I never really made a formal video or video series about it, but, like, I used to be on Socket 1700, an Intel platform, with a Core i5 12600K before the summer of 2025. Well, I'm starting to regret getting rid of it in favor of AM5. So, like, this whole LGA1700 PC build that I used to have, it was a complete disaster in terms of how I handled it. It was really stable, but, like, man, I just did not need to keep changing stuff over and over and over and over again. So, like, let's go back to July 2022. That's when I got my parts in. An MSI Pro B660A motherboard and a Core i3-12100. Okay, cool. Rather low spec, but it wasn't a downgrade from the Ryzen 5 2600X I used to have, but sold in like September of 2021 because I was having system stability issues rather intermittently. Kind of like how I am now on AM5, actually, come to think about it. But yeah, it was all good and dandy. I had that with an RTX 2060. Fairly decent. I wasn't really playing any demanding games. That was making the CPU be the weak point, or the GPU for that matter, even though I had a 3440 by 1440 monitor. Only 60 Hz, but that was such a good monitor. Well, then September 2022 comes, and I get shamed by some Neptunia idiots in a Neptunia server. Yeah, I was one of those people back then. Ugh. And then I start regretting everything. Yay! Although, it wasn't just getting shamed by Neptunia people that made me regret being on LGA1700 with a Core i3, but it was also an incident that had happened a couple days beforehand. Back with a little bait and switch that Newegg pulled with a Core i7-11700K and a certain Z590 motherboard. I did receive the motherboard, but I did not receive the 11700K. That pricing error was really just bait and switch on their eBay store. And I was like, oh man, I could have had an 11700K. I mean, as much as that CPU is not very well looked back upon, for $120, if it actually came with the CPU and motherboard, that would have been amazing. But also in August of 2022, that's when my uncle and cousin got their own 11700Ks with Asus motherboards. They were selling the 11700K with free motherboards at Micro Center for $250 at that time. And hindsight tells me that I should have just gotten one of those instead of getting on LGA1700 with a rather low spec system. I mean, yeah, it had the same amount of SATA ports, it had one more M.2, it had built-in Wi-Fi, and it still had PCIe Gen 4. But yeah, for a solid month and a half. This was me when I was 19, so this was at, like, rock bottom of my life. So, yeah, I would just be bitching and whining every other day or week or whatever the hell about the fact that I got a Core i3. Oh, boo fucking who. Does it look like I care? In my defense, though, the i3-12100 did feel like it was choking more in video editing than the Ryzen 5 2600X was, even though they both have the same multi-core performance, but the 12100 hammers it in single core. Although I think part of the problem is that I was still using Vegas Pro instead of moving on to DaVinci Resolve like I'm on now. Vegas Pro bad. The only reason people still use it is because they got grandfathered into it back in like the early 2010s or so. But yeah, I got sick of installing malware on my computer with those cracks, so that's why I moved to DaVinci Resolve, which I only realized that I did after I got rid of the 12600K. Well, not the 12600K, but LG1700 as a whole. Okay, enough of the i3-12100, but eventually the schizophrenia got so bad that I almost went and bought a Ryzen 5 5600X and AM4 motherboard and 16 gigs of RAM because I was somehow even more schizophrenic about having 32 gigs of RAM. But Core i3 is not good pair with 32 gigs of RAM, said no one but Zero Noob. But, like, if I actually did that, I would have actually felt like an idiot. I have 32 gigs of RAM now in this AM5 computer, and I'm wishing that I got 64 gigs, because I had that during my last month and a half of LGA1700. And also because sometimes I feel like I'm exhausting, or getting close to exhausting the RAM limits of this computer. because I think my computer usage habits have become more aggressive since getting onto AM5. Either that or AM5 somehow has worse memory management than LGA1700. But for better or for worse, I did not buy the Ryzen 5 5600X and ASRock B550 Pro 4 motherboard with 16 gigs of RAM, because I got bullied out of the budget build server for doing so. The messages no longer exist. I threw a meltdown back in like 2023 and deleted all those messages. Just buy a 13600K for that money, dude. I would have, but I was being an idiot. I went and bought a used 12600K on eBay. And to be fair, that wasn't a terrible move. It's just I don't feel like that I was quite ready to make that move, like upgrade my CPU yet. I've been imagining alternate timelines recently where, what if I had just built LGA1700 the way it was, but on October 28th, 2022, instead of buying a 12600K, what if I just bought a cooler? Because really I was annoyed with the stock coolers acoustics. So I could have just bought a cooler for that 12100 in anticipation of getting like a 13600KF. Okay, well, I got the 12600K. I got a CPU upgrade. Okay, it wasn't really choking in Vegas anymore. But since this was still rock bottom of my life, I got rid of it like an idiot in like early 2023 to drop to a 12400 because Windows 11 bad. They had E-cores and I don't get the performance I paid for. Only to end up going back up to Windows 11 in like May of 2023 because I was snapping and I was getting bored of 10 and I was like, wow, this was stupid. I should have just kept my 12600K. So you know what I did? Bought another one.
So you know what I did? Bought another one.
Although, with that second 12600K, I kept it for almost 2 years at least. But I was being an idiot and I got an MSI Z690A motherboard because I was like, Herc Dark, I need more SATA ports and M.2s and built-in Wi-Fi. Okay, the built-in Wi-Fi I can kind of understand, but there was an M.2 Wi-Fi slot on board. I could have just added that. I just added a Wi-Fi card to that and like used up one of my expansion slots that didn't actually have a slot and just shoved Wi-Fi in there. And like, yeah, I got the Z690 motherboard. That was quite a good board, but like, why? Why did I do that? Why didn't I just keep the B660? That was a good board. And the B660s have actually become rarer than their Z690 counterparts because no one bought them. Either that, or there are so many Z690s that are available, like, first-party refurbished. But yeah, one of the alternate timelines that could have happened is that I could have held out on the 12100 until May of 2023, so 10 months with the 12100, and I could have gotten a 13600KF for $260 brand new, which was a good price at the time. Although in hindsight, that might not have been the best idea, because Intel 13th and 14th gen are suicidal. I'm going crazy right now. But okay, whatever. That was 4 CPUs I had been through on that motherboard so far. Well, that motherboard plus the new one. Two motherboards, 4 CPUs, 2 of which were the damn same thing, by the way. And what was next? Oh, yeah. For like a year straight, I had to be schizophrenic about the RTX 2060 that I had, because it's not an upgrade from the RX 2070, because I never got to test them side by side. Except the 2060 was very much an upgrade. I mean, probably not sufficient for BeamNG though, because in July of 2023 I got BeamNG and I was starting to get into it. And if you saw my Alienware ultra-wide monitor video, you'd see that BeamNG was not really playable on this 5600 XT. Or actually, no, you wouldn't see that because I cut that out of the video because it was just so bad. And that was before the Vulkan renderer came out for BeamNG, which is better on the 5600 XT, but still pretty unpleasant. Oh yeah, I didn't take this opportunity to mention, but like, okay, yeah, I got rid of my U3421WE in January 2023 because I had some kind of beef with ultrawide. I don't know what it was, except for the fact that I couldn't display Neptunia games properly, in which, who the fuck cares? Neptunia games are not even that good. Just play them in windowed mode, dumbass. Okay, yeah, so that was back down on 1080p. in which the 2060 was doing fine. So, like, I did not need to upgrade. If I was on 1440p or especially ultra-wide, then yeah, I could have seen the justification for that. So, like, November 2023, a friend of mine shows that there's a $240 6750 XT brand new on Amazon. Well, that was great. I had already been an idiot, like, a few weeks prior, and I bought a 6600 XT used for $125. That was not an upgrade from a 2060. In fact, it was actually a downgrade in some ways because the card was built like shit. The cooler the GPU ran at like 60 degrees Celsius. It was a triple fan cooler, but it was a worse triple fans than the dual fans of the 2060. And like, eventually got to a point to where I developed Stockholm Syndrome for that 2060, but I could not find another one for a reasonable price. And I was insistent on getting another EVGA-SC. So then, September 2024, I get the 2080 Super, and then that was like, that was not a great experience. Dual slot, dual fan is not enough for that card. It needed to be triple slot, triple fan to really be cooled well, but also, it being a 250 watt card, that means that it dumps so much heat into my room. Gaming with it was actively unpleasant, especially when I moved over to the 200R Corsair case, in which, okay, yeah, that case is kind of sucky with its front airflow. I can modify it, I probably will, but even then, I don't know if a 9070 or 7800 XT or 7700 XT, I don't know if any of those are going to be sufficiently cool in this case. Not only that, but also not dump out a fuck ton of heat. God, I've been recording for 13 minutes now. Do I have anything to say about AM5? Yes, I wanted to upgrade to like 14600K, 13700K, whatever the hell. And then I realized that my second 12600K might have actually been worse silicon than my first one. So I was like, I need to get rid of this one, just start over. So then I sold that, the 14600K went back up in price, and I was like, man, that's not even worth buying. Because a Ryzen 7 7700 was similar money, I think. Okay, so yeah, like, I just said fuck it with LGA1700, and I sold the motherboard, CPU, got jack shit in return. I kept the RAM though, even though I had just upgraded to 64 gigs like a month and a half prior, because I went and moved that 64 gigs of RAM into my server. I held out on LGA1151-2 for a little bit, got an AM5 motherboard, that being an MSI XX70E Tomahawk, went on vacation to the Pacific Northwest for like a week and a half, got a Ryzen 5 7500F while I was up there, brought that back home with me, tested the motherboard. The motherboard was shot because I bought an open box, so I went and returned that motherboard, which was outside its return period actually, but I think the salesman had unintentionally misinformed me on the return window for open box products. But yeah, I was able to get the exchange honored. I was able to get this ASRock B650PG Lightning motherboard, which fit all my criteria of having 4 PCIe slots and having Wi-Fi that can be added later, since it didn't come with Wi-Fi. Pretty good board for $150. I did hear about the CPU killing issues with Zen 5 and ASRock boards, but I'm on Zen 4. That should be fine, right? Haha, no. Because I'm having more problems with this than I was with LGA1700. I don't know if that's because I have a 6400 megatransfers per second RAM kit, and I had to manually dial down the clock speed and timings to 6000 megatransfers per second CL30. But like, PBO is completely broken on the CPU. I don't know if it's just complete reject of reject silicon. This computer just has not been as stable as I've wanted it to be. I mean, when it's good, it's good. The desktop is snappier than it was with the 12600K, even though this processor performs the same at best. And really, I only got off LGA1700 just to get off LGA1700, not because I wanted AM5, but I really just went AM5 because there was really no other way to go. I mean, what am I going to do? Go LGA1700 again? Go LGA1851, in which literally only the 265K sells, even though I've heard that's a pretty good chip. In a gaming, it's not even that bad. It's on par with like a Ryzen 7 7700, which is often similar money, at least at this point. But like, I kind of repeated history where I got rid of AM4 because I was having problems with it, and that was rather justified, a little bit silly with the way I handled things. I'm not really that mad about it anymore. It was like 4 years ago. Still rather annoyed about the way I handled LGA1700 though. I mean, just not sticking to the B660 motherboard, mostly. I mean, I could care less that I didn't spend a year on the 12100 at this point, given how I kind of needed more CPU than that anyway, realistically. But, like, why didn't I just keep the motherfucking B660 board? That was such a good board. I did not need a Z690, and eventually it got to a point to where I was like, yeah, I don't need a Z690. I could get away just fine with B660 or B650 on AM5. And yeah, I'm not feeling limited by this B650 motherboard. The fact I went ASRock, I like ASRock, but like on AM5, especially with the Zen 5 CPUs, it's like apparently they haven't fixed jack shit with them yet. And I've even heard that trickling back to Zen 4, because I heard someone 7600X got killed on an ASRock AM5 motherboard, but that was X870E, and apparently these issues seem to be more related to the 800 series boards than the 600s. I don't know. It's a mess. I hate PC hardware so much, dude. It's no wonder why I renamed Tech Room into my server to Tech Doom and Gloom Room, because that's really all it is at this point. I mean, maybe I just have a rather negative outlook, but it really do be like that. Another way I'm repeating history. Okay, I'm not really feeling limited by the 7500F like I was with the 12100. DaVinci Resolve is more efficient than Vegas Pro ever could be, but like, I'm having the intrusive thought of going back to Intel. Like, either a 14600K, because those should be new silicon that isn't oxidized, and like with the right BIOS updates and applying an undervolt, which I was able to get undervolting working perfectly fine on 12600K, but not the 7500F, because apparently undervolting works so much differently on AMD, and it requires PBO, and PBO is completely broken on the CPU. And the other option would be to get on LGA1851 and get a 265K. I mean, there's no upgrade path from either a 14600K or 265K, but really, you shouldn't be impulse upgrading anyway. Just do as I say and not as I do, okay? Do you get that? Ugh, I've been recording for like 20 minutes now. I truly am going insane, aren't I? There's probably not even a point to putting this out on YouTube, but you know what? Fuck it, I'm putting it out anyway. Just so my audio rant is out there. I don't think anyone's going to watch this. If someone does, they're probably just going to be bitching and whining in the comments, but in which I'm like, okay, whatever. I said what I needed to say. But yeah, realistically, I don't think I'm going to be switching to Intel, because I already screwed myself over on AM5. Might as well just ride this out unless it becomes really bad. Also, I'd lose a fuck ton of money if I sold AM5, just like I did with LGA1700. LGA1700 has especially gotten really bad with losing its value. Is that all I wanted to say? I can't really think of anything else other than my 5600 XT just is not doing it, and I want to get a new GPU. I don't really want a 4070. Because NVIDIA is speedrunning their Joker arc, and apparently their drivers have gotten even worse than AMD in the graphics department. And I don't really want a 9060 XT because that's the most overrated GPU of all time, and I don't know why everyone likes it so much. But maybe I'm just a stubborn ass and I just don't want to go for the GPU to get. I'm always like that, admittedly. I wanted a 9700X at first, but pricing was terrible on that. Then I dropped down to 7700, but I was like, can I really afford this? But eventually I found the 7500F on Marketplace for $100, or it was $110 when I found it, but I talked the seller down to $100. And I just stuck with that because I needed something really just to get me on AM5. But I like the CPU when it works. I want to write it out for at least another year before getting like an 11700X or whatever the hell they're going to call the Zen 6. That is if I even stick to AM5. I don't know. If I have even more problems with this by the end of the year, then I might just say fuck it and go back to Intel. Although, then I'm going to have to wait like almost another year, or another year from now, in this case, when I'm recording this. Because that's when Nova Lake comes out, and apparently Nova Lake might actually be quite good. Arrow was pretty mediocre. Raptor was good until it wasn't. More of the story, just don't fuck yourself over like I did. Anyway, I've recorded for like 23 minutes now. That's enough of this rant. I hope you all have a good night. Peace out.